Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Mark Walsh.
So on the show today, a good friend Rokas from my Aikido background. His surname is something like Leonardo blah, 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 blah. I can't pronounce it because he's Lithuanian. And despite knowing this man for a few years and following his journey online, so he's kind of famous in the Aikido world because he was an Aikido teacher who had a disillusionment, I guess you could say, with Aikido. We'll ask him about that in a bit. And started doing mixed martial arts, incredibly popular on YouTube. And really, I've been following your journey, Rokas, and, we met up a couple of times. And I've always enjoyed your kind of humility and your genuine search for truth. So super happy to have you on the show. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you for the kind words. And it's a pleasure to see you as well. I mean, we kept seeing each other. I realized we know each other for a long time now.
It's like 10 years or something, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just that we would see each other through long periods, but it's nice to see as always.
So I've seen you through the journey a little bit. When I first met you, were like dedicated Aikido guy, and you were a live-in Aikido student, and you moved from Lithuania, and you were studying with Patrick Cassidy sensei, right?
Yes, that's true.
A respected Aikido teacher in Switzerland. And then I saw you when you moved back, and you set up your own dojo.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of your sort of journey body-wise, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that, the start of things? How did that happen?
I guess the short version is I figured out when I was finishing high school that there's no profession that suits me. Aikido was something that I was very passionate about. So I found a live-in student program in Switzerland run by Patrick Cassidy. And I went there initially for 3 months. Then I realized I need more time. So I spent there eventually 3 years in total until they said I'm ready to become an instructor. And that was my intention, to go back to my home country, Lithuania, open an Aikido dojo school. And I did that, and it was a successful school for quite a while. So it was a nice journey.
Cool. And what happened next? Because this is kind of the interesting thing here, and I had a bit of a parallel journey with you in some ways. Like you took it, I think, even more than me. So you're teaching Aikido, and you're in Lithuania, you had regular students, you're running a nice little dojo, you've got some credibility, you're really top Aikido lineage. And what happened?
Well, I was completely devoted to Aikido, and I was kind of the guy who, and part of what I learned in Switzerland was yoga and meditation. So I got a bit of the kind of Asian culture mentality, and part of it was don't question the teacher. It's the teacher's always right. And I was a very good student in that sense. I mean, quote unquote, in that sense that I didn't question or doubt anything. If sensei said jump, I would jump. And I think that fast-tracked my Aikido instructor's career, because I learned what I needed to learn quickly. But when I started my dojo, it's sometimes difficult to negotiate with myself what to share and what not to share, especially as it involves other people. But I think the honest answer is that I started seeing some of the issues that I saw in the community that I lived in Switzerland. Some of the issues that were there, I started seeing them in my dojo. And the question was, why is that happening? And started to understand that there's certain patterns that I was following that I learned, which weren't actually positive. There were a lot of positive things, but also the negative. By copying my sensei, I took out the negatives as well. And I believed things which I shouldn't necessarily have believed. And the big one, which is all about, my public journey is all about, is that Aikido claims to be an effective form of self-defense. And I knew that it's not a great form of self-defense, but I started questioning it even more, and I realized, and it's my opinion, but my opinion is that it's not a self-defense form almost entirely. It depends on obviously what you define self-defense as.
Okay, I'm going to put you, Rokas, I'm going to jump in there because you've said some really interesting things that I think
Sure.
Our listeners are martial arts people, yoga people, dance people. And you said, we're encouraged, particularly in Asian traditions, and I also see this in, say, yoga, to believe the sensei. to believe the teacher, to say, Patabi Joyce says this, it's true. Iyengar says twist, detoxify your liver. They do. No science necessary. The martial arts teacher says, I can hit you with this deft touch and they're going to fall over. And this is how it is. And there's a really strong social conditioning. And often these teachers are people we care about, people that have really helped us, like maybe helped us grow up as human beings, really given us a lot of benefits in our life. So we feel grateful. And it's like, hey, I really want to, and then we're invested. You've bought the Hakama, you've gone to Switzerland or Japan. You've trained in it for thousands of hours, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then it's really hard to question, both culturally and in terms of what you've got invested in it. And in your case, you had I think probably the most popular Aikido channel on YouTube. So this is no small thing, right? It's kind of awkward at that point to say, hey, I'm not sure if this works.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, actually, it was, I consider it was realistically the third biggest channel in the world for Aikido. I know there were two specific channels which had more subscribers, but still it was a big thing, I guess. Back in the day, it had a lot of popularity in the Aikido world. But when I look back, I consider that for me, truth was always more important than anything else. And obviously it wasn't easy, especially the hard part was, which we didn't necessarily come to yet in terms of the story, but the hard part was letting go of the teacher, letting go of the belief in the teachings unconditionally, starting to understand that people are people and everyone is flawed and you can't just completely be blind and not question anything. So I think that part was difficult for me. It was kind of challenging my identity that I developed. But aside from that, letting go of Aikido itself, that wasn't as hard as the other part. When I realized it's not what it claims to be, I realized, okay, well, I can move on. Time to search for something better. So it was kind of both at the same time.
And in a way, I think most people are much more invested in relationships and their own ego than truth. Like that's it's a difficult thing. And to say, hey, is this really true? Or does this really work? Whatever the context of work is, whether it's health or what works in stretching even, And then, but the interesting thing about martial arts is that there is at least a kind of a way to test it. And it's not maybe totally accurate. It's not 100% because, maybe MMA people still have gloves and there's no eye gouging or whatever. But it's a hell of a lot better than none, right? And we both hit this same point after years of Aikido. And like you were living Aikido student where I went, you know what, this is great. I've got a lot from it. Really some lovely relationships. But hey, does this work? And let me test it. So, for example, I saw a video where you had your, I think, then girlfriend, gorgeous, short, blonde lady, put on some boxing gloves, and you were trying to do an Aikido lock on her.
Yeah.
And even though you're bigger than her and you're really skilled, it was kind of tricky, right?
It was, yeah. It was absolutely. And I think through my journey, the biggest one that sooner or later we have to mention is the Aikido versus MMA that I did. It was when I stepped into the ring to try it out, to try my Aikido against a professional fighter who was being gentle with me, and it still did not work. But also, too, what you said, even with my girlfriend at the time, then I could, if I would really try to, with the size difference, I could force something onto her. But in terms of doing the technique the way it was expected of me to do in Aikido, that didn't work. It wasn't, even on those conditions, with a smaller person and being a lady, the way Aikido expects you to do the technique, that's almost impossible, which is crazy because that's kind of the basics of what you're learning for years. And to realize that it doesn't work even on those conditions is crazy.
So when most people realize that, because most people must have some idea that, the yoga's been told a one-sided story, or there's a one-sided story about their Tai Chi or whatever. Most people at that point kind of justify it somehow, right? And when you said, hey, I don't think this works, guys, and this is the video, people didn't say the problem is Aikido. The people said the problem is you, right? Yeah. Your Aikido doesn't work, they said.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I was very frustrated with it. And I have a kind of a questioning nature of mine. So I would question and I would sometimes consider, so maybe they're right. But I'm still frustrated because I intuitively felt it doesn't make sense. I mean, I devoted more than 10 years in Aikido and I traveled the world, trained, and was a living student. So if that's not enough and it's still my fault, it's like, So how could I have screwed up so badly? But the thing is, when I started sharing that story of questioning Aikido and showing its flaws, more and more people started connecting with me who had went through the same exact process.
Right.
It's like there's Roy Dean, for example, a famous Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now black belt.
We had him on the show. Good guy.
Oh yeah, awesome.
Yeah, we had Roy on. Yeah. Yes.
Did you talk about his journey in terms of
a little
discovering
bit? We mostly talked about jiu-jitsu, and I had the same thing myself. Like I went to MMA and jiu-jitsu. And I thought, hey, I've done, 15 years of really, and I've done really like tough Aikido with some Chiba tough guys, I thought at least I'm going to have a chance here.
Right.
And I didn't have a chance. It was like tap, 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 tap. And my ego took a bruising, man. Like I thought at least I'll be able to at least get one in or something. No, nothing.
Yeah.
And it's a hell of a wake up.
The crazy part is that when I exposed my journey and made it public, I started to learn that a lot of people across the whole globe from different Aikido backgrounds, including such as you just mentioned, like really hardcore Aikido where the training is rough. It wasn't just soft Aikido or some specific type of Aikido. It was a universal experience. And people went through the same a decade ago. They went through the same a few years ago. They went through the same after they saw my journey. And I realized if so many people are experiencing that for the whole globe, it can't be just me.
Right.
But it's so easy for the people who still want to stay in that illusion. That's the easiest scapegoat, is to blame it on the individual and say it's you. You failed. I have nothing to do with it. But I think that's the worst thing you can do.
And as you say, the reason I think this is interesting to listeners is not because I'm trying to convince people Aikido is bad. Actually, I still try Aikido sometimes because I like Aikido. I think it's great personal growth art. I enjoy it. It's creative, nice to people. It's good exercise, blah, blah, blah. There's reasons to do it other than realism. However, I've lost that delusion. And I think this is an interesting case study for people in lack of critical thinking, in being brought along with one's own investment, one's social relationships, one sort of Eastern brainwashing. There's a few kind of bits to it, and how people can be so in denial. Because I saw the pushback you got, and I was like, guys, you guys are tripping. This is just a humble guy who is honestly looking, and you're consistently humble. You're consistently not kind of an asshole like I am about it. And I was like, okay, guys, if you're being mean to this guy, it doesn't make sense. You need to look at yourselves, people. So how was that whole period? And then the other apostates kind of come out the woodwork and say, no, you're not the only one, Rokas.
I have to be honest, there were a lot of different periods. And one of it was, the part which I am least proud of is when I got a lot of pushback from the Aikido world, I started to reach kind of my limit of patience. I consider myself a patient guy.
You are a patient guy. I'll back you up on that. You took way more shit than I would took before you pushed back.
But eventually the point came, and I just got so frustrated, and I lost my temper, and I wasn't as bad as I could have been, but I started focusing much more on the negative, and I kind of went into a war stage against the Aikido people, and I took it personally, and I understand why it happened, but after a while, I came to a realization that it doesn't really work, that method was just creating more opposition. And when I was more diplomatic and I was more focusing on just being humble and exploring versus trying to prove something, then people were much more receptive. And still people hated me, some people hated me, but they would be more open to consider what I'm saying versus when I was just negative, it was a disaster. So
ironically, a very Aikido move.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, true.
You know what I mean? The real Aikido there, yeah. Okay, so, and then I saw you tried to kind of like make your Aikido more realistic or like add some element to it. And eventually you kind of went, okay, screw this. I'm just going to go train full MMA. You got a tap out t-shirt. And then you eventually went to a gym in Ireland, like a proper MMA gym, and really dived into it. What was that like?
Well, initially the way it started, I kept questioning Aikido, and I was searching for the right individuals to guide me through that, through trying to make Aikido functional. I thought that's the thing to do. And a bunch of people would tell me, try this, add some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, add some boxing, do this, do that. And they were all kind of gently trying to slowly push me towards a certain direction. But eventually I talked to Matt Thornton, who's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, And he went through the same journey with Jeet Kune Do, a martial art that is credited to Bruce Lee. But he did it years ago, but he had the exact same experience. And so I looked upon him, I had him in high regards, and I had a conversation with him, and I asked him, so what's your suggestion? What should I do? And now I know him very well. We're quite good friends with him. But then I didn't know him, so I didn't expect him to just straight out tell me, I think you should close your dojo. And that was just like, that's what he pretty much said. He said, I think you should stop Aikido entirely. Life is short, and you only have that much time to invest. And initially it shocked me a little bit. I was like, I didn't expect such a clear statement, but I thought about it, and soon enough I realized he's right. If I want to kind of find the fast track to learning and efficient martial arts, I should just focus on it. And soon enough, I did close my dojo. And initially, I went to the States, to Portland, Matt's gym, and I trained there for 6 months. And that was actually great. I mean, it was interesting because for 7 years, I was an instructor. I was the teacher. I was the guy who knows the answers. And there, I was a no one. Some people, my channel was already getting some traction, and some people are interested in the journey.
Could you take in your channel from Aikido channel to martial arts journey channel? It was like, here's a guy training in MMA, right? So people were following that. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, absolutely. And initially, it was interesting because I lost my audience a few different times. So one was I was an Aikido guy. Then I became the guy who's trying to functionalize Aikido. I lost certain audience, and a new audience built up. And then eventually I realized that's not the way to go. I shouldn't functionalize Aikido. I should just learn functional martial arts. So I dropped that. A bunch of people were upset about that. And then...
This is an interesting... Just going to jump in here, because it's an interesting case study in sort of following... I think like me, you believe in passion and purpose. And I saw one of your videos like, hey, I want to spend 80% of my time doing what I love. And 20% of the time you have to do some dog's work. Shit happens.
Yeah, sure.
But it's like every time we do that, we have this risk where we go, okay, I'm going to lose friends. I'm going to lose money, right? Like you've got an audience, and your YouTube channel is a lot more than mine. So you're getting ad revenue and whatever it is, and it's like it's a real move to say shit. And sometimes, like you did, you have to pack your bags, leave your hot blonde girlfriend in Lithuania, and go live in America or whatever, right? Like I'm also kind of curious about the practicalities of this life of just really going. And I did that for years as well. I said, right, I'm following truth. And that meant I'm going to leave these friends or this girlfriend or this whatever. Like that's a hell of a thing to do.
Yeah. It was a challenge, obviously, but also there was some rationality and also some intuitive sense that it's going to be fine, which I do trust in intuition to a certain degree. And when I made the decision to close the dojo, I felt, okay, I'm going to be fine. But also the rational part, one question that I asked, because closing the dojo, there was a lot of things that came into one single point. And one of it, I kind of stopped and looked and realized that running a dojo was a huge, huge thing to do. A lot of people were looking up to me, and I had to always deliver great classes. And it was a tiresome, intense work. And I loved it. But when I started questioning Aikido and everything I do, in order to run such a difficult, let's say, business or project, it needed a lot of devotion and passion. And when that passion started going down, I kind of saw that it's not going to become sustainable anymore. And another part of me, in terms of the kind of financial side, I realized running a dojo, which is a great thing, and I think some people can do it forever, but I started asking myself, where is this going to? Like, I saw a ceiling, which I could try to find ways around, but the ceiling was that if I get injured, if something happens, then I lose the dojo, and I won't ever progress beyond a certain number of students because there's limitations, and I have to repeat the same thing over and over. And I was doing YouTube already, and it was still just picking up. But I realized if I invest the time that I invest into my dojo, if I will invest that into YouTube, sooner or later, I will be able to sustain myself from that. So I had faith that that's going to happen, and that's what I did. And initially, it was not huge money, but I'm not a needy person, so that was enough. And I kind of made things happen. So it was a little bit calculated in that sense.
Yeah. Sure. Still a risk, huh? And What was it like kind of diving into MMA? So I did this for a year. I trained kind of twice a day, 6 days a week for a year. After a year, I was like, okay, I've kind of had enough. It was a good exploration though. My business was already going in a different way. So I didn't quite do what I might have done in my 20s and kind of do what you did. Because, MMA has this reputation of like, hey, that's not spiritual. You can't learn about yourself as a person. You can't grow as a person. It's just punching people in the head. And like that didn't look like your experience. So I'm curious, like about the personal growth journey you went in when you started doing MMA.
My MMA journey, you could say, started from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is very empirical. I think that's the right word. Meaning, as you mentioned in the beginning, in martial arts, you can test what you're doing and you can see the results directly if you're using the right method. And I feel Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does that. And I really fell in love with that kind of empirical approach of you try things and you learn very quickly through trial and error what works, what doesn't work. And the beautiful thing about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA, which was guiding me through the whole journey where I committed to, was that it teaches you to, very quickly, as you said, it's true that there's a stereotype of thinking that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA is for meatheads who are just all about punching heads. But most individuals that I met in those categories in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA were incredible individuals. And as you mentioned, I trained in SBG Ireland, where there's top world level fighters. And sometimes they make a show to make more money. That's part of the business. They play rough on the screen. But then when you meet them in reality, they're just humble, simple, sincere. And initially I was almost shocked by that because you look at them and they have tattoos and shaved heads and they're scary people. I was intimidated.
Did you get a tattoo?
I have a couple.
You got a couple of tattoos. You cut your hair.
So quick interruption to let you know about some of the stuff we're doing outside the podcast. So the Embodied Facilitator course and the Foundations of Embodiment certification, they're now running, so you can't get on those until next year. This year, if you're a yoga teacher, you can get on the Body Yoga Principles online teacher training, which is EYP.training. And the main one I would say is to go to embodiedfacilitator.com and get on our newsletter list. Then you'll hear about all the free events we do. We do free events regularly, certain free ebooks. The podcast itself is there, all the videos, all the stuff we do related to the content on the show. If you want, as I said, ebooks, books, free trainings, we do things regularly on marketing, on trauma, on facilitation generally. That's all there. So go to embodiedfacilitator.com and have a look around there and get on the newsletter list so you hear about the different trainings and things we have happening. Thank you, and back to the show.
You stop being a vegetarian, right? You look so much better now, man. Like, I hope you don't think that. Like, you just look healthier. You look like 10 times more manly than that fucking skinny, white-faced vegan Aikido dude. Like, you look healthier. I don't know if you feel it.
Absolutely, yeah. And that transformation was a big thing too, because I didn't want to admit that when I was a kind of the traditional yogi type, the stereotype yogi.
You did yoga guy. Right? Yeah.
But then my friends and my parents would tell me, my close friends would tell me, like, you don't look that good. And I was like, you're just making up stuff. But when I started just becoming more simple and looking for effective ways to eat, effective ways to train, that made a huge difference in how I feel and how I look. So I am happy about the results very much.
Yeah, you're a sexy dude now, man. I was like, I missed your channel for 6 months. I tuned in. I was like, damn, you got good looking. So it's good to see. Okay, so it seems like you've also now had a kind of third stage or fourth stage in this journey. Because I just kind of went onto your YouTube channel and did a bit of research before this interview.
Right.
I was like, there's a new thing going on. What's going on now?
So it's a fresh new thing. And today, specifically, just before I talk, I published a video already. There's a thing I do occasionally where I admit my mistakes. And that's a YouTube thing I did for quite a few times. When I did Aikido, I eventually agreed that some of my haters were correct. Aikido is not what I think. Then the same happened with MMA. And so eventually, with the new direction, I'm in that stage again where I'm exploring and trying to figure out, so what's the best way to do this? So it's still a very fresh and new product. But the way it happened, I started realizing that martial arts are creating a certain ceiling, again, limitation in my life. As you mentioned, what we share, what we have in common is that I feel that purpose and passion are very important aspects of life. And I always wanted to inspire that both in my life and in other people's lives. But with the martial arts journey, while I feel it had a great impact on many people, I started getting frustrated that there's a lot of people who are not interested in martial arts. And when I would have a conversation with them, they would learn that I'm a YouTuber, and that's usually exciting for people. But then they would ask, so what's the channel about? And I'd be like, oh, it's martial arts. And they're like, oh, okay, switch subjects. Change subject. I'm not interested. And I was like, well, there's interesting stuff there, but I couldn't reach those people. And I asked myself, so how can I still have positive impact to as many people as I can? And I realized that martial arts is not enough. So it's still a new direction, and I'm exploring what's the best way to do that. I have some ideas, and part of it is doing what I really love and sharing that, documenting that, how I try to make a difference, sharing what methods work for me. But it's still very much a trial and error process. And today, what I realized, initially, I thought, okay, I'll just completely dump the martial arts journey. I had enough of it. I shared what I wanted to share. And now I'm just going to start sharing my new journey. And that's where a lot of the pushback happened. Part of it, there's more obviously stuff, but then I listened into what people say, and a lot of people expressed that the martial arts journey, to the people who are in martial arts, it's very important to them, that they want to see that journey continue. And I'm not dropping martial arts entirely. So I figured, you know what, it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair for me to completely drop that journey. So right now the idea is that I will continue my martial arts journey, not on the same intensity, but I will still publish some content there. But the other half of my time, I will create content about trying to inspire as many people as I can, in a way to question their lives, to question if what they're doing is the best thing to do, if they are living the way they want to live, if their beliefs are the right beliefs for them. Just basically questioning, and what I inspired people to do in martial arts, I want to inspire that to do for people to do in every part of their lives. But that's kind of the newest discovery for me as well.
Cool. We're definitely on a parallel track here, because I got to a point where I loved Aikido, and then it was Aikido off the mat. And then I kind of went into this other sort of side road of MMA and stuff. And then I kind of went, you know what? Most people aren't going to do martial arts because it's too much commitment. It's too weird. It's athletic. You know, some people can struggle through it in middle age and even into old age, but it's like, you know, it's not for everyone. And it's kind of exotic. And that is a barrier. And I'd say, hey, I do Aikido, and people would make ninja. They go, wow, make Kung Fu noises or something, you know? And I'd be like, dude, you're missing the good stuff. The good stuff is how it develops you as a person and what you bring away from your life. And at a certain point I went, okay, why don't I just do that? You know, and I started doing that in business and with coaches and yoga teachers and different kinds of people. And, you know, but it's interesting. It's also good to have a hook sometimes, you know, like people who do their MMA or whatever, martial arts, they love it. There's something they love. There's something they're passionate about. It gives a hook. And then, you know, now I'm an embodiment teacher. It's a lot more abstract, you know. It's kind of like I look at your channel sometimes. Like, okay, maybe I should have done that. I should have picked the thing and just really. Or some of my students, they do acro yoga, and it looks kind of cool. And they've got this thing that they can base all the embodiment, personal growth around. So I can kind of see a case both ways, you know. And I'm wondering if you're going to get more into the kind of like martial arts for your life, and, you know, how it acts. Because at a certain point you go, okay, how much do I need to fight? How useful is that, right? And what becomes more interesting?
Yeah. You know, I think it's, you were saying, you know, about the difficulty of kind of being more abstract than specific. And when you said that, I completely resonate with you. It was a challenge for me for a long time, even when I ran my dojo. There's so many things I'm interested and passionate about, and so many things I find useful for myself. And I kept trying initially to just do this and teach that and introduce this. But eventually I realized, okay, it's not getting me the results that I want. So that's where I started committing to more and more towards YouTube and the journey. And it was successful, but at the same time, that yearning to share more is still there. And I feel that that's one of the challenges which I'm definitely facing right now, is what I want to share is not as specific. It's abstract enough for people to be confused. And it's such a challenge to drive them towards the understanding of and kind of a communal vision that we could both share and be inspired about. So I definitely resonate with what you're saying there.
Yeah, for me, I kind of just put my name behind a word, which is embodiment, and really like pushed a word or a concept that I thought, okay, this is broad enough to incorporate all the things that I'm interested in. But it's not everything, right? It's not, cognitive therapy or, there's things that aren't included under that umbrella. So and then I kind of just spent a few years really developing that word and the people being aware of that word and branding around that word. And it was like, okay, that kind of did the job, and now we can have an embodiment conference. It kind of makes sense to a lot of people. So, what are you going to get into then? What kind of stuff is now on your radar?
So again, it's hard to say. It's, as I said, it's very much a fresh and alive process. And I keep asking myself and I keep searching, but the newest discovery that I kind of figured is that I do have a long-term vision, what I want to achieve. I do kind of see the end goal of inspiring people and making a difference, of creating, that can sound a bit tricky, but creating a visual cue, a visual symbol that would inspire people. But that's a long story. But a short version is what I learned, what I discovered today, just over the days, is that it's not a problem for me to try things and fail and see what works and what doesn't. The challenge that I had before is that I thought, okay, now if I want to share my inspiration, I have to completely know what I'm doing. I have to be very precise about what I'm giving. But I realized without trying things and without experimenting, it's nearly impossible. So that's why I created the new channel, which is completely brand new. I'm going pretty much from ground zero. And instead of trying to be the person who's going to tell to people, oh, this is the right way, or this is what you should do, I decided to make this, again, into a journey and to include people as well. So I have some ideas of how to go through that. As I mentioned, doing things that I'm passionate about and including people in that, sharing the best things that I discovered that worked for me, but also to include people in regards of giving me feedback and trying things and seeing, so did this work? And kind of trying to find the best way to inspire people together. So again, it's a bit messy at the moment. It's alive and new, but I'm excited about this. I'm excited about instead of starting off right away with kind of that pretending that I know the answer, of trying to find the answer together with my audience. So it's an interesting process.
It's interesting. One of the old model was there was an expert who knew everything, and you kind of went to them for advice. And I wonder if it's kind of more like how most people actually feel now. There's loads of cool stuff out there, and we're trying stuff out. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And again, as I said, one thing which is what made me decide to do this new direction is when I had my Aikido dojo, I had it for 7 years. The students that I had, including children, teenagers, adults, today I know that it had a very big impact on their lives, especially when I closed the dojo. I didn't consider that it had the impact to that degree. But when I came into meeting with them, and in one day I decided that I'm done with Aikido, I'm closing the dojo, I didn't expect such a huge emotional reaction from them because I didn't realize how much it meant to them. And now it's been almost 2 years that I closed the dojo. And when I meet again with my former students, they all communally agreed that it wasn't the specifically Aikido that really mattered to them and made the difference. It was more my personal philosophy. It was more what I was sharing, the example that I was giving, that it had a huge impact on them. And so I feel that through what I do and through the methods that I use in my life, and sometimes I share that with people, I know that it can have a big impact and it can have a positive influence. But the question that I'm posing to myself right now is, how do I do that? What's the best way to do that with an international audience, and making sure that I don't do the mistakes that I did with Aikido, of blindly just following a certain teaching and, sometimes sharing good things and sometimes sharing bad things. So there's a lot of questions that I have myself as well.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, I can even imagine one day starting an Aikido dojo again, but just doing it in a very different way. Like, I wonder if there's, I wonder if there's a full circle that can even happen here, because in a way, it sort of doesn't matter what you're teaching, it's how you do it. It's the values you convey through that art, right?
Right.
Like,
right.
You can learn great things at a badminton club,
Yeah. I know there's a whole group of people who are rooting for me to do Aikido again. And I keep asking myself that occasionally and coming back to that question. So would that be the right way? And that would be, well, obviously I have a new audience which would hate me for it, unless I would, well, it was all about me leaving Aikido and now I come back to Aikido. But unless I would present it in the right way. But at the same time, there's a part of people who are rooting for me and they want me to come back to Aikido. But when I look at it myself, in a way, it would be an easy way for me because I do have the years invested in it. I do have the black belt and the knowledge. But at the same time, when I look at it, there's, even on the intuitive level, I don't have that sense of that I would really feel like I belong. It's not yet.
Yeah.
And so I would feel like I wouldn't feel like I'm at the right place. So that's so far that's enough for me to say, okay, not yet.
Okay, I'm going to kind of watch this space, I'm going to keep tuned, and I always love the humility and the sort of exploring you do. And, like, you're always taking another turn, like you turned up in this kind of black hoodie. And
yes.
kind of like you had a new kind of branding, I guess you could call it. And I thought it looked kind of cool, but I was kind of weird but cool. And a few people were really pushing back on that and like, what the fuck are you wearing, man? And I was just like, yeah, maybe you can say something about that. Like, you kind of tried this new brand, and then some people were like, you look like a Sith Lord, or kind of like, what was that, man?
It's definitely an interesting story in the sense that it is weird, it is unusual, but the way it happened, for years I had this idea, I had this vision or inspiration to embody a symbol, to embody a certain, you could say persona, but I want to avoid saying persona because I don't want to feel like I'm creating something which I'm not. It is more of expressing myself in the way I want to express myself. And part of that vision, I always had that idea of a certain outfit. And it happens to look, it looks that way. It looks a bit strange to some people. It reminds to people of a Sith Lord from Star Wars, Assassin's Creed. And I do feel I did some mistakes with the outfit, namely because I asked a friend of mine who's a professional, high-level, cloth designer, I guess, fashion designer. And I told her some of the things I want, but she also added some of the things she wanted. And it looks cool on the fashion sense, but it's not 100% actually what I wanted to express. There's some things, like specifically there are these, I don't know how to call them in English, these shoulders that are sticking out.
Yeah. And you know what? This isn't such, like, I've got a lot of, say, female Russian friends who will reinvent their look every few years. And they'll really consciously do it. And they, French friends as well, like particularly like women in certain cultures that really, they view how they dress as part of who they are. And not in a superficial way, but in quite a deep way, and in a way that I've learned to respect. And I go, well, maybe like as a sort of British dude, I kind of like am a bit blind to this. And, like there is actually something in this about consciously designing our look as a way of reinventing ourselves or becoming a symbol of a certain thing. And you know what I mean? Like this may have been a sort of slightly clumsy first effort. You didn't quite get it right with the designer, but I actually think this is really valid thing to do.
I appreciate you saying that. And part of me, because first of all, I consider that the right path is usually not the easy path. Yeah. And as crazy as it is for me to not wear the new and strange outfit, that would, in a big way, would be the easier way, would be to say, okay, I get it. People, you don't like it. While a lot of people don't connect with it yet, I feel internally again, and truly, I feel it's the right way. I have to do this. And I see that end result where my kind of one of the deepest desires is eventually to embody a message through that outfit. The same happens in many other areas. There's the Aikido hakama. It's such an empowering thing to wear. I remember the first time
that's the black sort of skirt like people wear for this.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And that's and you have to earn it. And when you do, it kind of empowers you. Or the same happens with doctors, policemen. So that the initial idea I had, I wanted to create a symbol through certain clothing that would inspire people visually, that they would, with time, learn what that outfit is about, what message it's there to deliver. So, for example, the mentality of questioning, the mentality of always trying to become better, and that they would associate all of that material with a certain outfit, so that if ever they see that outfit as one level, they would directly be inspired and be like, oh shit, that's that image, that's the guy, or that's the outfit which represents that. And potentially in the future, and obviously this is again fresh and new and just considerations, but one of the ideas that I have, it would be very cool if people who would want to embody the same, or kind of take in the same values and basically values or ways of functioning, similar goals, that they would not necessarily, I wouldn't be for wearing the same outfit. I think that would kind of neglect the individuality of that person, but maybe using a certain fragment of that piece of clothing to remind them.
I get it. Well, right. Yeah, this is like David Bowie was doing this in the 70s with clothes and reinventing himself, and it would inspire like a whole bunch of sort of Ziggy Stardust type things. They'd be different, but there'd be a vibe around it. So, listen, Rokas, I need to wrap up now, but this has been great. I really credit to you for keep following the truth. To keep being humble and patient and admitting when you're wrong, and for not letting the haters get you down. So I'll keep following your journey, see how it goes. And, I think you're moving into a place where you might enjoy some of the embodied stuff I'm doing. So you're always welcome at that. And, do you have kind of like a final message for people out there? Like, what would sum up a lot of what you've learned on this martial arts journey? How would you summarize it for everyone?
I think in the end, it's all about questioning. It's not just taking things for granted. And just because even if it's the best person in the world, the best, highest authority that said that, or the person you believe in, it's basically coming back to what Buddha said, always never believe what I say, always test it, always question it. And that's what I wish for myself and for other people, is whatever you do, always ask yourself, is this still working? Is this really still suitable for me? Am I actually doing the things I really want to do? And if it's the best way to do it? And I think that question can open up so many doorways, so many new discoveries and kind of level ups, that it just makes no sense not to do it.
Boom, Rokas, thank you so much for joining us today. And just for everyone out there, where can they find out more about you? Where do they go to YouTube, right?
Yeah, so basically at YouTube, my main channel is Martial Arts Journey. And my new project, I decided to dub it as The Journey. So an expanded version of martial arts without the martial arts, of The Journey. But basically, Martial Arts Journey is where you will find everything.
And just because I mangled your beautiful Lithuanian name earlier, do you want to say hello to our Lithuanian listeners? Because they never get any Lithuanian, let's face it.
You mean in Lithuanian?
Yeah, man, let's give them a shout out.
Okay, I'll go right away. So, sveiki visi, malonu bendrauti su jums lietuviškai, malonu, kad lietuviai klauso šitą podcastą, tobulėkit toliau ir tikiuosi susitiksim kažkur Lietuvoje.
Such a beautiful, strange language. Thank you, Rokas. Thanks for joining us today, man. It was really nice to see you again. You take care, brother, okay?
some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/embodiment podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So yeah, please go there. On the embodyfacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. Most people I think listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodyfacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment Podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on embodyfacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy. And of course, there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you.